Hey guys, what's going on? I am 3 books behind in my reading challenge, mostly because of the second book I'm going to talk about here today. It's a long one, but I didn't want to let some arbitrary number bar me from reading any longer books. And besides, I'm already on track to read more this year than I have ever read before, so that's enough of a victory in itself. Anyways, first book we got here is They Walked Like Men by Clifford Simak, a beautiful paperback. Probably my ideal vintage science fiction paperback aesthetically. It's got some beautiful abstract art on the front here, some bold color choices. On the back, some more abstract artwork, a little more identifiably alien, but look at that shade of purple. That is beautiful. Matches my shirt, kind of, almost. What more can you want from a book than to match your shirt? A lot, actually. Not that this one was bad. I really like this book. It's pretty pulpy. The main character stereotypically is a newspaper guy who figures out that aliens are buying up all the real estate on Earth and leaving people homeless. It's like a perfectly legal alien invasion. And he discovers that these aliens who can turn themselves into bowling balls and who try and kill people with bear traps, kind of like a Killer Clowns from Outer Space vibe, which was strange. And also like a Twilight Zone, Outer Limits vibe, which might just be all pulpy science fiction, gives me that feel. There were talking dogs. I guess Simak really liked dogs. That's no surprise to me. And after having read a few of his books, I really have an idea about who this guy was and what his ideals were. And they're very similar to mine. So I will read anything and everything that this guy has written. I did roll my eyes a few times reading this book because the overall message kind of veered towards communist propaganda, which I can imagine Simak might have been a proponent of. At one point, the main character suggests abolishing all property laws to solve the alien invasion, which admittedly would have worked. But more reasonably, he's talking about how greed and the love and pursuit of money can kind of turn people into aliens that exist outside the human race, that kind of prey upon the human race, which Vonnegut said very clearly in God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which I think Simak says here in a more appropriately pulpy manner. He didn't get into the details of it. It kind of just rode on the very surface of the story. Oh, and before I forget, this book used the word facetious, and I thought I knew what that word meant. I thought I had seen it enough times and had enough context clues to figure it out, but in truth, I had no idea. So maybe there's some other people out there who claim to know what the word means, but don't actually, like I used to. I thought it meant tongue-in-cheek, like saying something that you didn't really mean, saying something that you knew wasn't exactly true. But it actually means to make light of a heavy situation, like making jokes to alleviate tension, which is something I do all the time. So if you didn't know what facetious meant before, now you do. You're welcome. And also, this book used the word Lulu, which I think is some old slang, and it means if something is exceptional, like this book was a Lulu. I don't know if I'd call this book a Lulu, but then again, I have no idea really what the constraints of the word are. So anyways, next up, we got The Mote in God's Eye by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. The Larry Jerry Dream Team, as I keep calling them. So first of all, look at this cover. Mostly look at the alien. This is a cover I've seen made fun of before, but when you read it and when you get to the description of the alien, this is spot on. This is exactly how they describe the alien in the book. But I'm calling that a cardinal sin of sci-fi, is having the alien pictured on the front of the book. Because half the fun is building it up in your head and taking the clues and some maybe minor descriptions and assembling it in your head. What does it look like? How does it compare to a human? How big is it? How shiny is it? How spiky is it? And they just take it away from you right there. Because how can you look at that picture and not have that trump whatever kind of image that you put in your head? It's like me having watched The Lord of the Rings before I read it. All those characters were already assembled for me, which I thought was good because it was a pretty dense book to begin with, and any kind of outsourcing of imagination kind of helped me out. But that's kind of a gross term, outsourcing of imagination, which is ultimately what that's doing. But anyways, this book is set in the far future one of these where humans have built up their civilization and it crumbled and we're building it up again. An alien vessel is found on some outskirts of the universe and inside is a dead alien. So we send a military envoy to its origin point and we find the aliens. And it's a very diplomatic book. It's mostly about humans trying to make sure aliens don't get hold of our best technologies, and the aliens trying to make sure the humans don't find out about their less desirable evolutionary traits. Something I thought was really smart in this book, something I thought that was really accurate about humans, is that we weren't concerned with impressing the aliens with what we brought on this military envoy. We were concerned about defending our technology and our people and assessing threats and seeing how they could impress us, but we didn't bring anything that could impress them. I thought that made a lot of sense about humans. And it's got your pretty typical military versus science battle of ideals. There were a lot of characters. I felt like there was a lot of unnecessary card games and dialogues. It was a little dense for me. I don't know if this is classified as hard science fiction, but it felt like it. There were a lot of characters. They even throw in a romantic interest for the main character, which I like. I always like when science fiction includes a little romantic subplot, but it just didn't really do much. And that might just be because the aliens were so interesting to me. I just wanted to know more about the aliens. So anything that got in the way of that, I just wanted to get over with. Like, tell me more about the aliens. So they really did lead me along very well. Maybe too well? I don't know if that's fair criticism. It doesn't seem like a fair criticism. But the aliens were super engaging in this story. I was really into it, and not so much any of the other stuff. So when you get to the final 100 pages, it really zoomed by because that's when you get into the juicy stuff. And thematic spoilers, minor thematic spoilers, as you may have come to expect from me. But the idea at the end of this book is surprisingly heartwarming. It tells you that humans' superpower is optimism, and how it's so bizarre to these aliens that we can look at these grisly situations and find positive outcomes in them. There's a quote at the end, one of the aliens essentially saying, "Oh, silly humans thinking problems always have solutions." And I think that's a message that a lot of people need today. I can certainly be pessimistic, and any injection of optimism I find, I gladly take, because a person's outlook seems so malleable. You are at one point, and there are millions of potential outcomes to really any action. So it's on you to focus on specific outcomes without being naive and totally discrediting anything negative that might happen. But every person alive, I think, could stand to be a little more optimistic, especially because we're bombarded by things that turn us to pessimism. At least I am. Maybe I seek them out. So that was a very welcome conclusion to this book that took me a little while to get through, but that I'm definitely glad I read. And I know some people are going to say, "Oh, you rated that the same as that pulpy Simak book." It's hard to compare those two books at all. I think for a pulpy book, it was pretty good. And I think for a lengthy, hard science fiction space opera, perhaps it's a space opera, it was pretty good. But you should know by now not to take the ratings too seriously. Okay, and lastly, the Lulu of the bunch, perhaps, is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. I'm really starting to like Clarke. I started with Rendezvous with Rama, and it was kind of a rocky beginning because I didn't really get into that one. But then I read City of the Stars and I absolutely loved it. And then I read this one and I absolutely loved it. It's set, I think, in a near future where aliens one day just come to Earth, and one of these things where they have a mothership over New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, and they start to shape the world in good ways. Everyone would agree, in good ways. I think they focus on South Africa, where they say, hey, if anyone's racist in this country, we're going to blot out the sun. And as long as you're going to be racist, we're going to keep the sun blotted out. And that works, although pessimistically, I'm thinking right now, would that work in today's world? You know what? I'm going to choose to be optimistic and say that would work today. And they do that for a lot of aspects of civilization. And the best part about this book, what I think is the most accurate thing, is that the aliens just leave. They make all of these changes, and then they leave for 50 years and come back because they know that no matter what they do to humans, there's a certain amount of foundational resistance where it's going to take a generation to actually absorb all of this change. And that's so relevant to today in this world that's changing faster than ever, but people are not quite prepared for it. Sure, the younger generation who has been raised on the internet and social media might have a little more mental plasticity than the older generation, but that doesn't matter because we operate as one human unit. We can't expect everyone to accept all of this drastic change all at once. People looking for a solution to that is just time. It's just gonna take a lot of time. Like these aliens knew. But they come back and everyone's trying to figure out what is their deal? What are you trying to do here? And that's kind of the big question throughout the beginning of the book. It's almost like a series of short stories. They're connected, but there's big jumps in time. There are no consistent characters besides one of the aliens. And this is another one where the ending was really uplifting, surprisingly. It makes you proud to be this irrational, messy, impulsive, unorganized human. It makes you feel like there is power in that. Because a lot of times you read these alien stories, it's like, oh, they're super intelligent and super organized and their culture has zero waste. And here we are, humans, dealing with these archaic problems. But there is power in that. There is authenticity in that. There is a sense of satisfaction in that. That maybe I'm not conveying here, but in the story, it really makes you feel that way. That we may not be on the wrong path, we may be on the exact right path. And we just haven't seen the culmination of it yet. Which is an optimistic thought, which is what I'm going to keep. But this book was by far the most beautifully written of these three, as I've come to expect from Arthur C. Clarke. Definitely the one with the most literary merit. But I would recommend all three depending on what you're in the mood for. Not sure how they're going to fall in the end of year ranking. I imagine the pulpy one's going to go down a little bit and Childhood's End is going to go up a little bit. But we will see. As always, thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.